Good evening. I'd like to call this meeting to order of the Saco City Council for Tuesday, September 7th, 2021. Let the record reflect that all councilors are present. City Administrator Brian Canrath. With that, we'd like to invite all of you to join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you very much. There's no items for general. Moving on to item 5, committee correspondence to council. Any committee correspondence at this time? Councilor Hatch, then Councilor Johnston. Councilor Hatch.
Thank you, Mayor Doyle. I met with the Energy and Sustainability Committee this morning, actually. I just wanted to report publicly that the HVA system improvements of the police department continue to move forward. They're approximately 75% complete. Additional required improvements and upgrades are underway at other city-owned properties, including the much-needed roof replacement at Saco Middle School. And additionally, the committee was updated on the status of the streetlight conversion project. Public Works Director Pat Fox will make a full presentation to the City Council tonight. It's agenda item 10B under new business. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Johnston.
Thank you. So the School Construction Committee met for the first time last week. It was really just kind of an overview for the members, but it was pretty clear that it's kind of a long road ahead with about a 5 to 6 year time period to completion. So there will be several opportunities going forward where there's public participation, and we'll be looking for input. And then today there was the site selection subcommittee meeting, which again was another overview, more kind of like a question and answer period. And so I hope within the next few weeks, maybe even next week, we'll have another meeting where we start digging into potential sites. And so letting council know, because it's pertinent to all of us, seeing how some of those sites we may need, we just recently spoke of. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Johnston. Any further committee correspondence to council? Councilor Johnston, are they still looking for members to be on the school construction committee or any of the subcommittees?
On the subcommittee, the site selection subcommittee specifically, we are looking for some diverse members. Right now it's all men. So if there's really, I'd say specifically if there's like very young parents, like maybe have a 1-year-old or thinking of having children, if they're out there or new to the community, that would probably be a good person to come forward.
Thank you. For all those listening and watching, if you're interested in being on the school construction committee or one of the subcommittees, please reach out to Superintendent Jeremy Ray. With that, any further committee correspondence to council? Moving on, item 7, any public comment? There were no public commenters that had signed up. There are no public commenters seeking recognition now. Moving on, item 7, approval of the minutes for August 23rd and August 30th, 2021. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Second.
Motion's been made by Councilor McPhail, second by Councilor Hatch. Any discussion on the minutes? Roll call vote on the minutes. Councilor Archer?
Aye.
Councilor Purdy?
Yes.
Councilor Gunn?
Yes.
Councilor Berman?
Yes.
Councilor Hatch?
Yes.
Councilor McPhail?
Yes.
Councilor Johnston?
No.
Motion passes 6-1. Brings us to item 8, consent items. 1, item A is confirm the mayor's appointment to the Historic Preservation Commission for Ryan Prescott, page 2 in your packet. And then item B, combined massage therapist and establishment license for Joshua Huck, doing business as Great Escapes Massage, page 4 of your packet. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Councilor Gunn, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilor Johnston. Any discussion on the consent agenda items? Roll call vote. Councilor Archer?
Aye.
Councilor Purdy?
Yes.
Councilor Gunn?
Yes.
Councilor Berman?
Yes.
Councilor Hatch?
Yes.
Councilor McPhail?
Yes.
Councilor Johnston?
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0. Brings us to item 9, action items. We have several items here. Item A is a public hearing, final reading, Charter Amendments Number 3, Section 6.15, borrowing for permanent improvements, page 8 in your packet.
Thank you. The City Council endeavors to make a few amendments to the Charter, as described in MRSA Title 30A, Chapter 111, Section 2104. The process for making amendments to the Charter requires a public hearing before a vote by council. Additionally, if approved by the council, the item would be voted in referendum by the public in November. This amendment allows greater flexibility in how to finance bonded debt issuance by removing the requirement that principal payments be in equal or descending amounts in multiples of 5,000. This will reduce the upfront load on the taxpayer of future issuances by allowing for level total payments, principal plus interest over time. I move to open the public hearing.
Motion's been made by Councilor McPhail to open the public hearing. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilor Hatch to open the public hearing. Any discussion on open the public hearing? Roll call vote to open the public hearing. Councilor Archer?
Aye.
Councilor Purdy?
Yes.
Councilor Gunn?
Yes.
Councilor Berman?
Yes.
Councilor Hatch?
Yes.
Councilor McPhail?
Yes.
Councilor Johnston?
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0 to open the public hearing at 6:36 p.m. Any members wishing to speak on this item, come forward and be heard. Seeing that there is nobody looking to speak on this, Councilor McPhail.
I move to close the public hearing.
I'll second.
Motion to close the public hearing has been made by Councilor McPhail, second by Councilor Hatch. Any discussion? Roll call vote. Councilor Archer?
Aye.
Councilor Purdy?
Yes.
Councilor Gunn?
Yes.
Councilor Berman?
Yes.
Councilor Hatch?
Yes.
Councilor McPhail?
Yes.
Councilor Johnston?
Yes.
Motion to close the public hearing passes 7-0. Councilor McPhail?
Thank you. The City of Saco hereby ordains and approves the final reading of Saco City Charter Amendment Number 3, borrowing for permanent improvements, dated June 2nd, 2021, in order that the amendment be placed on the November 2nd, 2021 ballot. This amendment, if approved by the voters, would have an effective date of January 1st, 2022.
Motion's been made by Councilor McPhail. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilor Johnston. Any discussion? Councilor Archer?
Yes, just looking for clarification of the effective date. Isn't that supposed to be a few months later? It doesn't take place in January 1st, or am I mistaken? It'd be more based on state law, I believe, not city ordinance.
Is Clerk Hughes, could you, or Solicitor Murphy?
So in doing some research on one of your questions, the clerk and I came across a provision in state law that essentially says that unless you specifically clarify the enactment date of any of these charter changes, they won't take effect until the beginning of the next year, municipal year. Municipal year for us is defined as July 1. So the problem is we might enact them in November and they would not take effect until next July 1. So that's, you're going to see in a bunch of these the specification of an enactment date. And it's just to resolve that ambiguity in state law. So,
No, January 1st is, we've done it, so.
Yeah.
As is written.
Okay.
We're good. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions? Okay, the motion's been made by Councilor McPhail, second by Councilor Johnston. Roll call vote on the motion. Councilor Archer?
Aye.
Councilor Purdy?
Yes.
Councilor Gunn?
Yes.
Councilor Berman?
Yes.
Councilor Hatch?
Yes.
Councilor McPhail?
Yes.
Councilor Johnston?
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0. Brings us to item B, a public hearing and final reading for Charter Amendment Number 4, Section 2.05, Election and Term, page 10. That is Councilor Gunn.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The City Council endeavors to make a few amendments to the Charter. As described in MRSA Title 30A, Chapter 111, Section 2104, the process for making amendments to the Charter requires a public hearing before a vote by council. Additionally, if approved by the council, the item would be voted in referendum by the public in November. This amendment focuses on the election and term of the deputy mayor. I move to open the public hearing.
Motion's been made by Councilor Gunn to open the public hearing. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilor Purdy to open the public hearing. Any discussion? Roll call vote to open the public hearing. Councilor Archer?
Aye.
Councilor Purdy?
Yes.
Councilor Gunn?
Yes.
Councilor Berman?
Yes.
Councilor Hatch?
Yes.
Councilor McPhail?
Yes.
Councilor Johnston?
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0 to open the public hearing at 6:40 PM. If there's any member of the public that would like to speak, please come forward and be heard. There is nobody seeking recognition. Councilor Gunn.
I move to close the public hearing.
Councilor Gunn has made a motion to close the public hearing. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilor McPhail. Any discussion on closing the public hearing? Roll call vote. Councilor Archer?
Aye.
Councilor Purdy?
Yes.
Councilor Gunn?
Yes.
Councilor Berman?
Yes.
Councilor Hatch?
Yes.
Councilor McPhail?
Yes.
Councilor Johnston? Motion passes 7-0 to close the public hearing. Councilor Gunn.
Thank you. The City of Saco hereby ordains and approves the final reading of Saco City Charter Amendment Number 4, Section 2.05, election and term, and further orders that the amendment be placed on the November 2nd, 2021 ballot. This amendment, if approved by the voters, would have an effective date of January 1st, 2022.
Motion's been made by Councilor Gunn. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilor Berman. Any discussion? Roll call vote. Councilor Archer?
Aye.
Councilor Purdy?
Yes.
Councilor Gunn?
Yes.
Councilor Berman?
Yes.
Councilor Hatch?
Yes.
Councilor McPhail?
Yes.
Councilor Johnston?
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0. Brings us to item C, a public hearing, final reading, Charter Amendment Number 5, Section 2.07, Power and Duties of the Mayor, page 12 of your packet. Councilor Gunn.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The City Council endeavors to make a few amendments to the Charter, as described in MRSA Title 30A, Chapter 111, Section 2104. The process for making amendments to the Charter requires a public hearing before a vote by council. Additionally, if approved by the council, the item would be voted in referendum by the public in November. This amendment focuses on the appointments of members of municipal boards and commissions. I move to open the public hearing.
Motion's been made to open the public hearing. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilor Hatch. Any discussion on opening the public hearing? Roll call vote to open the public hearing. Councilor Archer?
Aye.
Councilor Purdy?
Yes.
Councilor Gunn?
Yes.
Councilor Berman?
Yes.
Councilor Hatch?
Yes.
Councilor McPhail?
Yes.
Councilor Johnston?
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0 to open the public hearing. Public hearing is now open at 6:43 PM. Those wishing to speak on this item, come forward and be heard. Seeing nobody wishing to speak on this item, Councilor Gunn.
Thank you. I move to close the public hearing.
Motion's been made by Councilor Gunn to close the public hearing. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilor Berman to close the public hearing. Any discussion? Roll call vote. Councilor Archer?
Aye.
Councilor Purdy?
Yes.
Councilor Gunn?
Yes.
Councilor Berman?
Yes.
Councilor Hatch?
Yes.
Councilor McPhail?
Yes.
Councilor Johnston?
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0. Councilor Gunn.
The City of Saco hereby ordains and approves the final reading of Saco City Charter Amendment, Section 2.7, Powers and Duties of the Mayor, and further order that the amendment be placed on the November 2nd, 2021 ballot. This amendment, if approved by the voters, would have an effective date of January 1st, 2022.
Motion's been made by Councilor Gunn. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilor Purdy. Any discussion?
Mr.
Councilor Berman, then Councilor Johnston.
Yes, thank you. As I've given this amendment further thought, I've become concerned about the concept of having councilors serve no more than 2 consecutive years on any board or commissions and requiring a break of 2 years before reappointment. It's taken me the better part of a year to gain expertise and mastery of committee function, to learn what they do, and to be a real contributor. I think having councilors switch committees, all of their committees, after 2 years in the middle of their term, really disrupts the ability to gain that expertise, to gain mastery, and to contribute to both the committees and therefore the council. I therefore like to make a motion to amend this amendment to strike the sentence starting at "to assure counselors have opportunities to serve on various boards and commissions," and ending at a break of at least 2 years to remove that restriction.
Second.
Okay, so we're striking out the language that begins second sentence of the red line that says "to assure counselors."
That's correct, Mr. Mayor. I'm moving to strike that entire sentence.
Amendment has been proposed by Councilor Berman, second by Councilor Johnston, to strike the sentence beginning with "to ensure counselors have opportunities to serve." On the amendment only. Any discussion on the amendment only? Councilor Johnston.
Thank you. Yeah, this was the topic I was going to discuss in the original motion. I think that, it's rather unnecessary, honestly, in the sense you have the mayor that ultimately appoints and council approves. So there's your checks and balances if there's a feeling that, someone has been on a committee too long. But specifically with some of our committees, I think that, as Councilor Berman was explaining, some of these are rather technical, and it takes years to kind of be proficient at. Some have always fallen to certain ward councilors. I look at, coastal waters, for example. That's always been in the Ward 4 wheelhouse. Not to say that somebody else couldn't do it, but I could envision something occurring where a brand-new Ward 4 councilor comes in, and we all know we're in the process of negotiating with the Army Corps, so we could have a total novice that is, now in that seat. In the past, it's traditionally always been 6 and 7 that's been on traffic safety because they deal with the bulk of traffic safety issues. So, yeah, I just think that mandating something like this actually probably could lead to more issues down the road than we would want. So, if anything, it's probably best in the council rules and orders of business than in the charter itself. But I would agree with just striking this entirely. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Councilor Gunn.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. To Councilor Johnston and Councilor Berman's point, I would have, to elaborate on, I would have agreed with the principle of the proposed amendment before, Councilor Berman's motion to revise it, if in the language it had been for perhaps one term. So like after 3 years of serving your term, maybe you are rotated to another board, though. But the 2-year thing, I find a little, the spirit of it, I would support if we were still on 2 years, though. The fact is that you could be in the, 2 years into a term and have a good working relationship with a board or a commission, and, just by charter, lose that in your last year of your term, though, I think doesn't really benefit the overall thing, your overall performance of your duties as liaison. And like I said, if this had been a simple, term limit to 3 years of one liaison, or board or council, I probably would have supported it. But as written, yeah, I'd have to agree with my fellow councilors on this one. I don't like the setup as it is.
Thank you. Any further discussion on this amendment only? Again, the amendment to strike the language beginning with "to assure counselors." Striking that sentence is the amendment. Seeing no further discussion on the amendment only, roll call vote. Councilor Archer?
Aye.
Councilor Purdy?
Yes.
Councilor Gunn?
Yes.
Councilor Berman?
Yes.
Councilor Hatch?
Yes.
Councilor McPhail?
Yes.
Councilor Johnston?
Yes.
Back to the main motion as amended. Any further discussion? Seeing no further discussion, roll call vote on the main motion as amended. Councilor Archer?
Aye.
Councilor Purdy?
Yes.
Councilor Gunn?
Yes.
Councilor Berman?
Yes.
Councilor Hatch?
Yes.
Councilor McPhail?
Yes.
Councilor Johnston?
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0. That brings us to item D, a public hearing, final reading, Charter Amendment Number 6, Section 6.06, City Council action on the municipal budget, page 14. Councilor Johnston.
Thank you. The City Council endeavors to make a few amendments to the charter as described in MRSA Title 38, Chapter 111, Section 2104. The process for making amendments to the charter requires a public hearing before a vote by council. Additionally, if approved by the council, the item would be voted in referendum by the public in November. This amendment focuses on the municipal and school board's budgets. I move to open the public hearing.
Motion's been made by Councilor Johnston to open the public hearing. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilor Hatch. Any discussion on opening the public hearing? Roll call vote to open the public hearing. Councilor Archer?
Aye.
Councilor Purdy?
Yes.
Councilor Gunn?
Yes.
Councilor Berman?
Yes.
Councilor Hatch?
Yes.
Councilor McPhail?
Yes.
Councilor Johnston?
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0 to open the public hearing. Public hearing is now open. Those members wishing to speak on this item, please come forward and be heard. Seeing there's nobody seeking to speak on this item, Councilor Johnston.
I move to close the public hearing.
Motion's been made to close the public hearing. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilor Hatch to close the public hearing. Any discussion? Roll call vote to close. Councilor Archer?
Aye.
Councilor Purdy?
Yes.
Councilor Gunn?
Yes.
Councilor Berman?
Yes.
Councilor Hatch?
Yes.
Councilor McPhail?
Yes.
Councilor Johnston?
Yes.
Motion to close passes 7-0. Councilor Johnston.
City of Saco hereby ordains and approves the final reading of Saco City Charter Amendment Number 6, Section 6.06, the City Council action on the municipal budget, and further order that the amendment be placed on the November 2nd, 2021 ballot. This amendment, if approved by voters, would have an effective date of January 1, 2022.
Motion's been made by Councilor Johnston. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilor Archer. Any discussion? Councilor Archer.
Yeah, I'm what is this, my fourth school budget, or give or take? This is definitely what we need to do. We need to make the process earlier. For myself, Councilor Johnston, and the mayor who served in past councils, 3 years ago, we tried to reduce the budget, because again, you got to do each line item. And it became a catastrophe, if I remember correctly. We had to take funds out of one way. Councilor Johnston and the mayor can definitely follow up on this. And a lot of times the system, it may have worked in the past, but it just hasn't worked in the last couple of years as we've seen. I think that this just allows us to do our duties as fiduciary representatives of the city without getting into the nitty-gritty of what the school board does. Again, this will just allow us to approve a certain amount, and then it goes to the hands of the school board, rather than us going to all the cost centers and cutting a certain amount, and then there was a 5%, they could shift funds anyway. I just think this is the cleanest way to do it. So I'll be supporting this.
Thank you. And Councilor Johnston?
Thank you. Yeah, Councilor Archer just summed it up very well. It was a holdover from when we were in the RSU, and it required we go through the cost centers. And I, as Councilor Archer just said, I've always found it kind of cumbersome where we, being council, has a direction that we'd like to take, and then ultimately we get stuck with these cost centers. And as I've always said, if I wanted to be on the school board, I'd run for school board. And so this kind of reestablishes their role and our role, and hopefully be more collaborative going forward, where ultimately we'll say this is the number we're willing to give, and it'll be on them and their staff to figure out how to make it work. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Roll call vote on the motion. Councilor Archer?
Aye.
Councilor Purdy?
Yes.
Councilor Gunn?
Yes.
Councilor Berman?
Yes.
Councilor Hatch?
Yes.
Councilor McPhail?
Yes.
Councilor Johnston?
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0. Brings us to item E, a public hearing, final reading, Charter Amendment Number 7, Section 8.03, recall, page 16 of your packet, and that is Councilor Gunn.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The City Council endeavors to make a few amendments to the Charter, as described in MRSA Title 30A, Chapter 111, Section 2104. The process for making amendments to the Charter requires a public hearing before a vote by council. Additionally, if approved by the council, the item would be voted in referendum by the public in November. This amendment focuses on the number of signatures and form of ballots associated with recalls. I move to open the public hearing.
Motion's been made by Councilor Gunn to open the public hearing. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilor Berman. Any discussion on opening the public hearing? Roll call vote to open the public hearing. Councilor Archer?
Aye.
Councilor Purdy?
Yes.
Councilor Gunn?
Yes.
Councilor Berman?
Yes.
Councilor Hatch?
Yes.
Councilor McPhail?
Yes.
Councilor Johnston?
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0 to open the public hearing. The public hearing is now open at 6:55 PM. Those that would like to speak on this item, come forward and be heard. Solicitor Murphy.
Thank you, Mayor. I direct the council to the very last sentence, which says that the city council shall order an election to such vacancy. I believe we inadvertently omitted the word fill, not fill the name, fill as in hold an election to fill the seat. So I'd like to point out that omission and ask that one of you offer that as an amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Solicitor Murphy. Any further on the public hearing? Councilor Gunn.
Thank you. I move to close the public hearing.
Motion's been made to close the public hearing. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilor Archer to close the public hearing. Any discussion on closing the public hearing? Councilor Archer?
Aye.
Councilor Purdy?
Yes.
Councilor Gunn?
Yes.
Councilor Berman?
Yes.
Councilor Hatch?
Yes.
Councilor McPhail?
Yes.
Councilor Johnston?
Yes.
Public hearing is now closed. Councilor Gunn.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The City of Saco hereby ordains and approves the final reading of Saco City Charter, Amendment Section 8.3 Recall, and further order that the amendment be placed on the November 2nd, 2021 ballot. This amendment, if approved by the voters, would have an effective date of January 1st, 2022.
Motion's been made by Councilor Gunn. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilor Purdy. Any discussion? Is there? Councilor Berman, then Councilor Johnston. Councilor Berman.
I move to amend this charter amendments to add the word fill, F-I-L-L, prior to the word such vacancy in the last sentence.
Amendment has been made by Councilor Berman to add the word fill into the last sentence before such vacancy. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Councilor Hatch. Any discussion on the amendment only? Amendment only. Hearing no discussion, roll call vote. Councilor Archer?
Aye.
Councilor Purdy?
Yes.
Councilor Gunn?
Yes.
Councilor Berman?
Yes.
Councilor Hatch?
Yes.
Councilor McPhail?
Yes.
Councilor Johnston?
Yes.
The amendment passes 7-0. Back to the main motion as amended. Councilor Johnston.
Thank you. I guess it's more of a statement or a question, I guess. The strike-through for 60 days, and we are adding 105 days. I think I know the answer, but I think just for the public to understand, that's to allow for potential candidates to get nomination papers and whatnot, correct?
I believe that is what Clerk Hughes suggested to us in some of the other charter amendments that we've previously put forward.
All right, so I was just clarifying that we're not trying to extend a period. It's more of a matter of meeting ordinances or other requirements. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion on the main motion as amended? Roll call vote on the main motion as amended. Councilor Archer.
Aye.
Councilor Purdy.
Yes.
Councilor Gunn.
Yes.
Councilor Berman.
Yes.
Councilor Hatch.
Yes.
Councilor McPhail.
Yes.
Councilor Johnston.
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0. Brings us to item F, a public hearing, final reading, Charter Amendment Number 8, Section 9.02, limitations on page 18 in your packet, and that is Councilor Johnston.
Thank you. The City Council endeavors to make a few amendments to the charter as described in MRSA 30A, Chapter 111, Section 2104, the process for making amendments to the charter requires a public hearing before a vote by council. Additionally, if approved by the council, the item would be voted in referendum by the public in November. This amendment focuses on former employees and/or elected officials doing business with the city. I move to open the public hearing.
Motion's been made by Councilor Johnston to open the public hearing. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilor Hatch. Any discussion on opening the public hearing? Roll call vote to open. Councilor Archer?
Aye.
Councilor Purdy?
Yes.
Councilor Gunn?
Yes.
Councilor Berman?
Yes.
Councilor Hatch?
Yes.
Councilor McPhail?
Yes.
Councilor Johnston?
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0. The public hearing is now open at 7 p.m. Those wishing to speak on this item come forward and be heard. Nobody is seeking recognition on this item. Councilor Johnston.
I move to close the public hearing.
Motion's been made to close the public hearing. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilor Archer. Any discussion on closing the public hearing? Roll call vote to close. Councilor Archer?
Aye.
Councilor Purdy?
Yes.
Councilor Gunn?
Yes.
Councilor Berman?
Yes.
Councilor Hatch?
Yes.
Councilor McPhail?
Yes.
Councilor Johnston?
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0. Councilor Johnston.
City of Saco hereby ordains and approves the final reading of the Saco City Charter Amendment, Section 9.02, limitations, and further order that the amendment be placed on November 2nd, 2021 ballot. This amendment, if approved by the voters, would have an effective date of January 1, 2022.
Motion's been made by Councilor Johnston. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilor Berman. Any discussion? Councilor Archer?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just when we first talked about this last week, I was very concerned about a councilor, a former member, or anybody identified here being able to personally solicit the city for their property or something of that nature. I do believe that this was cleaned up to a manner in which a former city official could still request a permit from the city, could still do basic citizenry tasks. So I see that that has been addressed, and I agree with it.
Any further discussion?
Mr. Mayor.
Councilor Johnston?
Thank you. I think that, as Councilor Archer stated, we've kind of cleaned this up to be more descriptive as to who we're discussing. But I do think that perhaps it was inadvertently removed, the last sentence, where it previously stated, no city official may, for a period of, previously said 2 years, represent a third party before any city entity, board, council, or administration where the former city official practiced or worked. That was my intent. I just would like to amend it to add that back in, but remove 2 years and make it just a single year.
So under section 9.2A, you want to add a number 4, or just add on to section 3 with
Yeah.
the amended language?
Correct, 3. It was previously the last sentence in 3.
Councilor Johnston has made an amendment to add in the last sentence of the formerly 3, to add into this newly revised language for item 3. Is that the understanding, Councilor Johnston?
Yes.
Okay. That is the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilor Archer. Any discussion on the amendment only? Amendment only. Councilor Gunn, and then Councilor Gunn.
Yes, just could Councilor Johnston please repeat, just so
Yes.
I have full clarity of what we're voting on?
Yep. So it previously stated that no city official may, for a period of 2 years, again, I'm looking for a single year, represent a third party before any city entity, board, council, or administration where the former city official practiced or worked. So the intent was, again, say you're a former city employee, you retire, and then you become a private consultant, and then you go to work for somebody that has application before the city. The period, or the hope is that is I guess a cooling off period of a year where you don't have, as close relationships, and there potentially could be, undue influence. That's the hope, anyway.
Thank you.
Any further discussion on the amendment only? Councilor Archer.
Just to also help me understand, to consult, there's two different ways to look at it. There's the official capacity in which someone reaches out to the city or staff member or something like that, or to consult with a private entity in which they never actually talk to the city. It seems duplicative, that one last sentence, compared to what the paragraph states. My question is more about how do we enforce private citizen talking to private citizen, it never includes the city interaction. I don't know the enforceability of that, or even if you can, if they never actually talk to the city. So, for example, if someone hired John Smith, who just retired or left the city, for their institutional knowledge, and that's all they're actually consulting. How would you enforce that?
I would agree, you can't enforce that, but I'm saying specific to, I hire John Smith, and then John Smith, on my behalf, goes to the city, and whether it's, files the application, starts working my project, we'll say, through the process on my behalf.
Okay.
Obviously, you can go to anybody and say, hey, what do you think about this? And you could charge an hourly rate for that.
So you're talking like a bypass entity to kind of get around it?
Yeah, I guess. I mean, I think that, obviously it's limited to what's enforceable, but obviously if John Smith had just worked for the city 6 weeks ago, and then his agency or whatever, his consulting firm is now representing Marshall Archer, you'd be able to say, sorry, you have to find somebody else
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
to represent you.
Councilor Berman.
Yes, if I understand correctly, the language Councilor Johnston is trying to add states, no city official may, for a period of 1 year, represent a third party before any city entity, blah, 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 which in my mind means that while they could work for somebody doing business with the city, they couldn't come before the city or a city board or city council or administration as part of their business, which to me makes sense and is reasonable.
That is correct. That is the amendment. Councilor Purdy.
I'm sorry, we'll go through the amendment, then I have a question.
On the amendment only? Seeing no discussion, roll call vote. Councilor Archer?
Aye.
Councilor Purdy?
Yes.
Councilor Gunn?
Yes.
Councilor Berman?
Yes.
Councilor Hatch?
Yes.
Councilor McPhail?
Yes.
Councilor Johnston?
Yes.
Amendment passes 7-0. Back to the main motion as amended. Any discussion on the main motion? Councilor Purdy.
Thank you. My only concern with this now is as written. I'm fine with the amendment, but reading it, a strict reading of it would almost sounds like it eliminates a former official to so much as email their city councilor or make public comment at a council meeting. And the reason I'm saying that is the last part of the section in red, it says, or the city council. I understand the idea behind this amendment to the charter, and I'm for that, but I just don't want to eliminate any former officials' right to address any situations that they may have a concern about. So I would make an amendment to strike the last section, or the city council.
So you would like to make an amendment to remove "or the city council" at the end of section A3.
Yes.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Counselor Gunn. Discussion on the amendment to remove "or the council." Counselor Archer, then Counselor Gunn.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Last week I brought up these exact concerns, and then this was the amended version. And I'm going to tell you why I actually think that it's fine as written. And again, it's just my interpretation. When we talk about, we've been all-inclusive of what a city official is. So we've kind of checkmarked, this is what this person is. We know it's 1 year. So then I looked into lobby. Technically, you're not lobbying until you're actually a lobbyist. It requires a certain amount of contact with city officials, things like that. So if you're a business and you outreach one of our local state representatives, that's not considered lobbying yet. It hasn't reached to that level. So when I started looking at that and I realized, okay, I would agree that one couple contacts throughout a year is not considered lobbying. Solicit business from that, I mean, that's pretty direct, saying Marshall ends his term, Marshall cannot start selling product to the city. That's pretty clear. Or any other city official. Consulting is more than just providing information at the public hearing. That's not technically consulting, that's just presenting ideas and informing your leadership, your city leadership and your elected officials. And then advise. So that's different. So you wouldn't be sitting on any board. So when I looked at it in this context, it really didn't take away your rights as a citizen. And that was my concern last week. I did mention it at the beginning of this, on how I supported this amendment. So I actually would not get rid of city council in this case. I'll be against this. But again, that was my interpretation when I broke down each word and what is the intent. The asking for a permit is not consulting. It's not soliciting business. It's not advising. So I think as written, it meets my needs anyway.
Thank you. Counselor Gunn?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And to Councilor Purdy's point, what threw me was the last part, advise, though, because advise, as Councilor Archer pointed out, I mean, you mean in the formal sense, but as written, I can see Councilor Purdy's point, though, because to use the example, say you're unsuccessful in your reelection campaign. I certainly hope that doesn't happen. But if you then have a concern and you turn around and email me as a sitting councilor and say, hey, I think maybe you guys should do A, B, or C, right? There could be, just as written, the argument made by anybody who FOAs a request or just simply wants to know who is talking to me, that they would interpret that as advice. Now, it may be unsolicited advice. God knows that as counselors, though, we often get plenty of that. But if I happen to be on the receiving end of unsolicited advice from a former city councilor, that puts me in the opposition of what if I agree with the advice and I act on it. I mean, it's sort of like the old insider trading thing, though. If you get the information, do you not act on it and lose millions of dollars, or do you act on it and go to prison? So, again, a bit of an extreme, though. But going back to the point, though, I wouldn't want to see any former city official, if they just simply wanted to offer their advice. I mean, that's a First Amendment right, though. I mean, and obviously I believe in any restricting speech of former officials, obviously to negate undue influence, though. That's why I was fine with the rest of it. But the reason I supported Councilor Purdy's amendment was for the simple reason that advise is such a vague and sort of open term. I wouldn't want to preclude or go down the slippery slope, basically, of having citizens, for many reasons, perhaps not the most noble, start nitpicking counselors' correspondence with any other citizen in the town, though, whether it's on an important matter or a mundane matter. So that's why I was a little thrown by advice, and that's why I'm supporting Councilor Purdy's amendment on this.
Thank you. Counselor Johnston?
Thank you. I think what's missing, or at least the intent, was for profit or for payment. I don't think we're trying to, preclude a former employee from giving free advice to the city or whatnot. So maybe that cleans it up by adding for payment. It previously had for payment, profit or not, on their own behalf or on behalf of third parties. and that seems to have been removed. Maybe there's a reason for it, but I think that kind of sums up what we're trying to get at. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Gunn.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. To Councilor Johnston's point, like I said, I think that would, if the language, as cumbersome as it might have been, was in there to make it specific to the public, anyone reading this, that it does not preclude or attempt to preclude any resident's right to petition any member of their council, I think I'd be much more comfortable if that language was in there, even if it's just a couple of sentences, to make sure that it's in the official capacity as a representative of a third party or a business, not in your individual capacity as a citizen voter, et cetera. Again, before we get to Councilor Purdy's amendment, it's something we can perhaps consider and offer an amendment for.
Thank you. Councilor Archer.
Yes, again, I definitely hear that. Maybe we need to wordsmith the advise rather than getting rid of city council, because when try to reread it quickly and get rid of or the city council, it would then allow a former city official to do lobby, solicit business from, consult with, or advise the council. So I think it's more of a wordsmith thing. Now that I've re-looked at it, I'm definitely don't want to get rid of the city council, because then you've just allowed all these acts to happen to the council. And I think that's clearly what we're trying to not happen. So we do have our attorney here. Would it be correct, or would it be available if he could wordsmith the word advise?
I think Councilor Johnston has brought up a good point, and I think if we can get through this amendment, just adding that section back in, I think solves the intent of the issue related to advising for profit.
So we would, again, you don't pick what, I'm just looking for clarification.
I'm thinking if...
What my intent is most likely to put down a current, the amendment, and vote on another amendment that will be coming. Okay.
That's what I would anticipate may be happening.
Okay.
Councilor Purdy.
To make this easy, I will withdraw the motion for the amendment.
Councilor Purdy is withdrawing his amendment. Councilor Gunn, you were the second. Are you willing to withdraw your second?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. The amendment is now withdrawn. Is there an amendment, Councilor Johnston?
Make an amendment to add after advise for payment, profit or not, on their own behalf or on behalf of third parties.
The amendment has been made by Councilor Johnston to add in for payment, profit or not, et cetera, et cetera.
Second.
Seconded by Councilor Archer. Any discussion on the amendment? On the amendment only. Roll call vote on the amendment. Councilor Archer.
Aye.
Councilor Purdy.
Yes.
Councilor Gunn.
Yes.
Councilor Berman.
Yes.
Councilor Hatch.
Yes.
Councilor McPhail.
Yes.
Councilor Johnston.
Yes.
The amendment passes 7-0. Back to the main motion as amended. Main motion as amended. City Solicitor Murphy.
Thank you, Mayor. I wonder if it would aid the council's consideration if there was a sentence added that said essentially something like this: no part of the above clause shall be interpreted to bar or limit any citizen from addressing the city council for or upon their own personal interests or matters. Something like that, to make it clear that citizens are still allowed to come before the council, and a short declaratory sentence to that effect.
Is there a councilor willing to make that amendment? Councilor Archer?
Make a motion to add that amendment as spoken by our solicitor, city solicitor.
Second.
Motions, the amendment has been made by Councilor Archer, second by Councilor Johnston, to accept the recommendation of City Solicitor Murphy to add in a sentence at the end that does not preclude members of the public to come before and offer, and I'm paraphrasing, to offer guidance and experience to the council, so forth. On the amendment only, any discussion? Roll call vote on the amendment. Counselor Archer?
Aye.
Counselor Purdy?
Yes.
Counselor Gunn?
Yes.
Counselor Berman?
Yes.
Counselor Hatch?
Yes.
Counselor McPhail?
Yes.
And Counselor Johnston?
Yes.
Motion, the amendment passes 7-0. Back to the main motion now as amended twice. Back to the main motion. Any discussion? Roll call vote on the main motion. Counselor Archer?
Aye.
Counselor Purdy?
Yes.
Counselor Gunn?
Yes.
Counselor Berman?
Yes.
Counselor Hatch?
Yes.
Counselor McPhail?
Yes.
Counselor Johnston?
Yes.
Main motion passes 7-0. That brings us to item G, a public hearing, final reading, Charter Amendment Number 9, Section 9.03, Judge of Qualification, page 20 in your packet. Counselor Gunn.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The City Council endeavors to make a few amendments to the Charter, as described in MRSA Title 30A, Chapter 111, Section 2104. The process for making amendments to the Charter requires a public hearing before a vote by council. Additionally, if approved by the council, the item would be voted in referendum by the public in November. This amendment focuses on removal of individuals from boards, bodies, and commissions. I move to open the public hearing.
Motion's been made by Counselor Gunn to open the public hearing. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Counselor Purdy to open the public hearing. Any discussion on open the public hearing? Roll call vote to open the public hearing. Counselor Archer?
Aye.
Counselor Purdy?
Yes.
Counselor Gunn?
Yes.
Counselor Berman?
Yes.
Counselor Hatch?
Yes.
Counselor McPhail?
Yes.
Counselor Johnston?
Yes.
Motion to open the public hearing passes 7-0. At 7:21 PM, those members wishing to speak on this item come forward and be heard. There's nobody seeking recognition. Counselor Gunn.
I move to close the public hearing.
Motion's been made by Counselor Gunn to close the public hearing. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Counselor Purdy to close the public hearing. Any discussion on closing the public hearing? Roll call vote. Counselor Archer?
Aye.
Counselor Purdy?
Yes.
Counselor Gunn?
Yes.
Counselor Berman?
Yes.
Counselor Hatch?
Yes.
Counselor McPhail?
Yes.
Counselor Johnston?
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0 to close the public hearing. Counselor Gunn.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The City of Saco hereby ordains and approves the final reading of Saco City Charter Amendment, Section 9.3, Judge of Qualification, and further order that the amendment be placed on the November 2nd, 2021 ballot. This amendment, if approved by the voters, would have an effective date of January 1st, 2022.
Motion's been made by Counselor Gunn. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Counselor Purdy. Any discussion? Counselor Berman?
Mr. Mayor, the city has a code of conduct and ethics that lists as possible punishment for violation, removal from boards, bodies, or commissions. I believe that code should be referenced here in Section B, where the commission to remove any appointed member of a city board, body, or commission if such member is determined to have engaged in misconduct, criminal activity, violation of the city code of ethics, or otherwise in violation of their oaths of office.
Counselor Berman has offered an amendment.
Second.
Counselor Johnston has seconded the amendment, and that is to add in following criminal activity and before the word or, we're going to put in the code of conduct policy. Is that correct?
Right, violating the code of ethics / conduct of the city.
Violating the code of ethics / conduct of the city. On the amendment only. Any discussion? Seeing no discussion, roll call vote on the amendment only. Counselor Archer?
Aye.
Counselor Purdy?
Yes.
Counselor Gunn?
Yes.
Counselor Berman?
Yes.
Counselor Hatch?
Yes.
Counselor McPhail?
Yes.
Counselor Johnston?
Yes.
The amendment passes 7-0. Back to the main motion as amended. Discussion on the main motion as amended. Roll call vote. Counselor Archer?
Aye.
Counselor Purdy?
Yes.
Counselor Gunn?
Yes.
Counselor Berman?
Yes.
Counselor Hatch?
Yes.
Counselor McPhail?
Yes.
Counselor Johnston?
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0. That brings us to item H tonight. That's one reading, a contract zone extension for 15 Oceanside Drive on page 22 in your packet. and that is Councilor Berman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A contract zone agreement was authorized on November 20th, 2017, reconfiguring the Driscoll's property, tax map 11, lot 116, into 2 separate parcels and allowing construction of 1 additional single-family residence on that property. Due to unexpected delays in obtaining associated state permits and illness and death of family members, the applicant failed to begin construction of the project within a timeline specified in the agreement. The Driscolls are now requesting the City Council to extend the time period of the contract zone agreement until June 9th, 2022, to provide a reasonable time frame to begin construction of the project. Be it resolved that the contract zone agreement between the City of Saco and Nancy and George Driscoll governing certain property found on Oceanside Drive remain in effect and is hereby amended to grant and authorize an extension of time through June 9th, 2022, but no longer, for the Driscolls to secure any required permits issued or overseen by City Code's office. I move to approve the resolution.
Motion's been made by Councilor Berman. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilor Archer. Any discussion? Councilor Berman?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, bear with me 1 second. I'm certainly in favor of the amendment and will be voting to support it. However, I was interested to see on page, let me just get there. I apologize for the delay here. It's a lot of pages. There was a reference in the packet to seeking permission from the EPA to connect to the sewer. And that was found, I believe on page 33 or 34. I had it marked. I'll find it in a second. Although it looks like this plan, the one in the packet, contained a septic system. And I was wondering, and I inquired with City Administrator Cainrath, it appears that at least once, and maybe multiple times, construction along this area in Kinney Shores has received permission from the EPA to connect to the city sewer. There's been some allowances given by the EPA. And I'm wondering if here, it's on page 44, number L, a connection to the city sewer system shall only be possible with approval by the Federal Environmental Protection Agency, subject to sewer grant project C23014704. And I would like to suggest that in this case, we should be once again seeking such permission to connect to the sewer. I think it would alleviate some of the concerns from the neighbors that we've heard from. It would also serve to protect the environment. I don't want to make the receipt of such approval a condition of the contract zone, but I think a good faith effort should be made to reach out to the EPA in order to at least seek such approval. And so I would like to amend the contract zone to require a good faith effort to reach out to the EPA to seek such approval to connect to the sewer.
Councilor Berman, so your amendment is to amend the CZA to good faith effort to EPA for approval.
That's
Not
right.
that it's conditioned that it fails for non-approval, but what you're saying is that they have to make a good faith effort to apply
That's
to the EPA to get into the grant program.
That's my intent,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Mayor.
Is there a second? Is there a second?
Second for discussion.
Second by Councilor Archer. It's now to the floor for any discussion. Mr. Driscoll, would you like to speak?
Yes. Thank you.
Please state your name and address for the record and speak into the microphone so everyone can hear you.
Chuck Driscoll, 33 Cove, Saco. I'm here for my mother, 15 Oceanside Drive, Saco. just to comment on that. In seeking such request, would I be put in a position to get past June 9th again and end up in the same position I am now with the government agency? That would be my only concern. Other than that, good faith effort would go forward.
Mr. Driscoll, as I understand it from the amendment, all the amendment's saying is that you make a good faith effort to contact the EPA and get that approval. It doesn't mean that you have to get it by that time. It just means that you have to make a good faith effort. That is the
Good.
amendment.
Thank you.
That's my intent.
Any discussion? Roll call vote on the amendment only. Councilor Archer?
Aye.
Councilor Purdy?
Yes.
Councilor Gunn?
Yes.
Councilor Berman?
Yes.
Councilor Hatch?
Yes.
Councilor McPhail?
Yes.
And Councilor Johnston.
Yes.
Amendment passes 7-0. Back to the main motion as amended. Councilor Johnston.
Last week, I had asked about the public recreational easement, if that had been drafted yet, and I certainly am not looking to hold this approval up, but if we could have that in place, at least by that June date, deadline, I'd appreciate that.
Thank you. City Administrator Canrath, has that been drafted or is that in the process? Thank you. Any further discussion on the proposal as amended? Roll call vote. Councilor Archer?
Aye.
Councilor Purdy?
Yes.
Councilor Gunn?
Yes.
Councilor Berman?
Yes.
Councilor Hatch?
Yes.
Councilor McPhail?
Yes.
Councilor Johnston.
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0. That brings us to item 10 of tonight's agenda. New business, we have two items. Item A, remote meeting policy discussion, and item B, a streetlight presentation. Item A on remote meeting policy discussion, page 65 in your packet. Brian, will you be giving a presentation on this, or will Communications Director Roy be giving it?
No, I believe
Presentation.
Communications Director Roy can give a brief overview if that's desired, then take any questions.
Please. Welcome, Director Roy. Thank you.
Thank you. I do not have a presentation prepared, but I did submit a memo to you all with a draft remote meeting policy. So we just wanted to capture what we've currently done during the pandemic to pivot to remote meetings, and then have a meeting with the council about the options for in-person, remote meetings, and then there are some conversations around hybrid meetings. So we reviewed the different policies for several communities. We reviewed Scarborough, South Portland, Bangor, Biddeford, and we tried to get a good handle on what other communities are doing for this. It's based on LD 32, which was also provided in the packet. So from this, we just wanted to capture what we're currently doing and then get some direction from the council if you want us to explore opening up the hybrid option. And if so, then we can run through what the cost implications are for that.
Just real quick, just to be clear, obviously, that if we were to look at a hybrid method, that's going to be cost, staff, et cetera. It's not going to be just an easy sort of transition, and we would have to prepare for that. So that needs to just be noted that the hybrid meeting option is a bit more complicated.
So just a couple things to note before you have your discussion. So if we're offering remote participation to any counselor, then it needs to also be offered to the public. So that's really clear in LD 32. We wanted to make sure that our local policy, we were abiding by the charter, which does require 48 hours notice to properly notify the public of any sort of change in the meeting, unless there's an emergency. If we want to explore fully hybrid, then that's when we'll need to talk about staffing, because the other communities who offer this, the hybrid option, do have a local access channel or additional staff to be able to record and cablecast those meetings. Then we'll also want to avoid any communication breakdowns, so we'll want to be as consistent as possible. So some communities offer hybrid for every meeting if they move in that direction, so that you don't have the community trying to figure out, do they need to be there in person? Can they participate remotely? And making sure we're consistent. And then there's also the chance with hybrid that the technology is imperfect. So there is a chance that in order to allow that public participation in a meeting, if we were to quickly try to pivot to a hybrid meeting, then the technology could fail and we'd have to cancel the meeting. That did just happen in another community. And then just another thing to note, that this policy does require a public hearing prior to adoption, which is different than our standard process for policies, but we can then move to the final reading on the same night. So just a policy heads up.
Thank you. Any questions for Director Roy or City Administrator Canrath? Councilor Hatch, then Councilor Johnston. Councilor Hatch.
Emily, is there any way we can do an informal survey amongst the citizenship to see what interest there is in a hybrid? I'm not talking about spending a lot of money, but some survey monkey, some type of communication through Facebook or email or whatever methodology you seem. I think it would be helpful to me as a council. I have my preconceived notions, but I'm not sure how accurate they are. So trying to get some feedback from our constituents would be helpful if that's possible.
Sure.
Councilor Johnston.
Thank you. I mean, draft looks good, looks great. You know, my real purpose of bringing this up a couple weeks ago, and thank you for drafting this so quickly, was, you know, again, that hybrid model. I mean, it's been really a long-standing goal of mine for really prior to being on council, that we got more of our meetings, not council meetings, but planning board, other meetings broadcast out there and had more, you know, public participation. So I'm definitely still supportive of, you know, the hybrid. So again, as 1/7, I'm interested in, you know, what we needed going forward, and, you know, look to support that. So if staff can kind of figure out what the technology is and the costs of, you know, creating potentially a staffed position, I suppose, I would like to see that. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further, Councilor Archer?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. In the definition section, it never actually discussed what hybrid was, so I definitely want to get a better understanding. The vision I see, I think we need to have this for emergency, but our primary purpose should be here in person. However, when I think of hybrid, it's not the council, it's not the city staff. Hybrid is for the public. So the way I kind of vision it is that if a member of, somehow have us here, have Zoom going or whatever platform we use, and the public can Zoom in for any public comment section. So the very beginning of the meeting, public hearings, that it would be not completely hybrid throughout the whole time period of that council meeting. However, when public is allowed to speak, they could do so through Zoom, in which they would pop up on these monitors here and present to council. I think that would be a great way to increase public participation, because I have noticed that public participation with Zoom meetings increased. And as a parent, I think that's because if I have a child leaving Saco Parks and Rec at 6, and I have to get them home and I have to get them wherever I need to go, I can do that with Zoom and still be able to publicly participate. And in today's society with technology, it's more about the message than it is about someone standing at the podium. So when I hear hybrid, and I didn't see it, I saw other ones, which is great, I really don't have that understanding, but that was kind of what my brain had processed it. Again, I think for the most part, city business should be done brick and mortar, but use Zoom as a tool for the public, less for the government to the public, but the public to the government. That may not be as costly because you wouldn't need too much staff. It'd be kind of time-based because we know when public hearings are, we know the beginning of a meeting, things like that. But under that version of a hybrid, that's how I was seeing it. But we primarily, I believe, we have to be at the Diaz. Just, that's my own personal opinion.
Can I speak to that just for a moment? So the staffing implications are more on us being able to provide that hybrid platform for any board and committee. So that'll be another determination that we need to make. Is this the council can do hybrid and other boards are remote or in person? Are we looking to expand this offering to other boards and committees? That's where those staffing implications will come in. And then we did get a few quotes already, so I will package up the quotes that we have for the equipment that would be needed to accomplish hybrid and the staffing implications. I'll put together a proposal with that information.
Thank you.
To follow up, with that in mind, if I was to think of a hierarchy, if we had to dedicate resources, I would say council business first, and then probably planning. I mean, you figure out the hierarchy of that purpose if we're trying to discuss resources.
Councilor Berman?
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. In looking at the state law, I guess LD 32, on the second page, it's page 70 of our packet, number 2 requirements, section B, number 2, is listing some of the conditions under which you might allow a public official to attend a meeting remotely. The first one is illness or other physical condition or temporary absence from the jurisdiction of the body that causes a member of the body to face significant difficulties in traveling to or attending in person, and so forth. And I remember during the period of Zoom, Councilor Archer himself zoomed in from his condo in Florida, which I was jealous of. In contrast, when we were back in person, I had to drive back in the evening from Mount Desert Island, where I was working for a couple of weeks. A great personal inconvenience in order to attend in person. I also feel my experience with some of the committees is that attendance by both committee members and the public was much higher when we offered a Zoom option. So while my general kind of inclination is that the meetings flow better and communication is facilitated when we're together, there are occasions in which someone's attendance at the meeting for an important vote or to weigh in on a particularly important issue is greatly facilitated by allowing some remote connections. And so I guess I'd be very curious as to what the cost and staffing and equipment kind of implications would be. And if the city could find a way to do that, I think it would be only for the good.
Thank you. Emily, Director Roy, nothing precludes any member of the public from emailing their representatives because we are in a representative form of government. So nothing in here precludes them from commenting on any topic that's before the city council in an email fashion or a letter fashion to that respective councilor. A phone call also might work. I think when you're looking at this policy council, you may want to look at as we learned through some charter amendments, what are the problems that you're going to develop by going to a hybrid system, cutting people off. As Director Roy said, if the system goes down, you have to cancel the entire meeting. Remember the point of public comment. The point of public comment is for members of the public to deliver to you a message. They don't have to do it here in person. They can do it via phone, they can do it via email, they can do it via letter. So remember, the hybrid model, well, people like it and they can sit at home and chime in. They can still do that via email, phone call, letter. And we have 2 ways of simulcasting now that we're going through to broadcast out to people. So we're reaching a lot of folks. And we're not trying to, I think, say, hey, we don't want public comment. But remember, the public comment is to tell you what the representatives, what they would like. And they can do it in several other forms and fashions rather than being hybrid. Because again, you may develop unintended consequences of doing so. But just maybe keep that in mind. Any further discussion? Okay.
Great.
Director Roy, can you bring back some examples for the council to look at as they've asked for with regard to costs and process?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That brings us on to item B, which is a streetlight presentation, and that will be Director Fox. Welcome, Director Fox. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Technology worked in my favor tonight. It's already on the screen. That's a bonus. So I think all of you have heard pieces of that we are converting our streetlights, purchasing lights from Central Maine Power. A law that passed 4 or 5 years ago now allows municipalities to do so. We're not the first to do it. We're kind of somewhere in the middle of our surrounding communities. But I don't think you've really seen an update on that project since budget time and since we started moving forward in selection of our contractor. So just wanted to run through the process, and then this is hopefully you'll get to see this presentation, maybe some comments and tweaks, and then it's something we can get on our website and get out to our residents. So I'll run through this quickly, but I can certainly provide more detail than what's here, or we could just keep going with the project and keep doing public updates as we go. So the first step of the process that we're in right now is purchasing the existing infrastructure from Central Maine Power. So Central Maine Power currently owns and leases an inventory of 1,593 streetlights to the city. Wood poles that you see out there that carry all of our electricity, telephone, cable, broadband, those wood poles are owned by either the electric provider or the communication provider. We have a little bit of both. That won't change. It's just if you look at the pictures to the right, the top picture is what we call Cobra heads. So the traditional streetlight pole that sits on a Central Maine Power pole, we have 1,404 of those Cobra heads. And then if you look at the ones down below, are some of our newer neighborhoods that do not have overhead utility feeds, but rather underground, are serviced by typically a fiberglass or an aluminum pole with a decorative post top. So there's 189 of those. There's actually several more. We have probably 200 or 300 that we already own. So this would be 189 of them that we're getting from CMP. We pay $12 to $20 a month. That's just to lease these back from Central Maine Power. So that's the big savings that you're going to see from this project, is that goes away. So we're finalizing the purchase documents with Central Maine Power, so we should own all of this existing light infrastructure later this month. Upon acquisition, we then are responsible for the maintenance that goes with those lights, and we simply pay the electricity that they use, any maintenance or any replacement needs down the road. So that's sort of the first component of the project, a significant value of it. And then we move on to the actual replacement of what we now own. So we're going to own CMP infrastructure as is, where is, in the existing condition. Some of them might be a year old, some of them could be 20 years old. So Real Term Energy is the company we've contracted with. Same firm that did the conversion in our neighboring community to the south. So Biddeford had Real Term Energy and the same light fixtures we're looking at. So they're going to concentrate on purely the 1,404 Cobra headlights that I talked about on the wooden poles. They went through, mapped all of the existing infrastructure. They had a recommended plan that includes LED smart controls with connectivity to each and every light. So the pricing includes us being able to see every light in the city through a computer dashboard interface 24/7 and monitor the functionality and performance of each light. They did do some additional design at our request, and that design was based on vehicle crash history, pedestrian activity, surrounding land uses such as downtown or density, schools, parks, and the existing spacing of the wood poles that these lights are on. And they found 144 locations that they've recommended we increase light levels. So we just put back a slightly different fixture than what the straight conversion was on wattage. So the financials of I won't go through every single number, but the big ones are that we're buying CMP's lighting infrastructure for $132,000. $341,000 is just the straight fixture replacement costs. And then we have, now that we own these things, we have some spare inventory we'll have to carry. There were design and audit costs associated with the project. And then another significant component that we're going with is the smart control option, which is $113,000. But to try to add, because the lights are capable of it, if we tried to add that technology later, obviously that would be another trip up to every single pole with the contractor. So the labor costs would just, if we're going to do it, the time to do it is during initial installation. So some annual costs moving forward would be the smart control software. And we actually will have a cellular connection to each and every one of our 1,600 lights after this project is done. Don't worry, each light only costs like $4 a year, not your usual cell phone bill for each and every light. So once we saw that we could have $4 a year for connectivity to each light individually, that was a pretty easy decision. Maintenance and service plans, we will obviously need certified contractors to be able to go up and perform the maintenance or replacement on these lights. We don't anticipate much. They all come with a 10-year warranty, but we're going to stay with the same firm for the first couple of years of maintenance at least if there's a problem with the light, they can diagnose if it's a warranty issue and also follow through on the warranty process on behalf of the city. So we're not going to take on a lot of staff burdens with this conversion, even though we're going to own a widespread asset throughout the city. We're not going to be having to dedicate a lot more staff time as long as we structure the maintenance contract properly. So, like a lot of projects we do, we don't build when we estimate these things and get them approved in the council. We don't build in much extra contingency. So, as some of these options came up and we wanted to utilize them and take advantage of them, I just wanted to go over if you went back to your 2022 budget book, capital financing, much like the same financing we used to purchase our vehicles, streetlight conversion was in that, and we talked about it at the time. We anticipated, I think the final number we had was $504,000 that we could finance out and that we carried in the 22 budget. You can see that first column, we're going to cover $497,000 of this project cost within that capital financing. So that'll be 5 years of payments of $77,000 a year, plus the down payment that was already made within the project. Outside of that, what's covered under what we did this year in 22 was we weren't sure when this would happen. So part of being able to get the smart controls and stuff, I'll credit to Jen Mazzaro at Central Maine Power has been they're selling us an asset that is theirs, and they've been very cooperative in doing so. So that process has gone quickly and smoothly. And then Real Term Energy, just given their history of doing this in Maine and in the surrounding communities, they're doing a fall installation, which means that we're going to see the savings the rest of this year from what we typically pay. We're paying $20,000, $30,000 a month in just leasing fees that we're going to recover for the rest of this operating year. So that helps us so within the operating budget of Public Works, in our normal $270,000 that we budget for street lighting, we're able to recognize some of the savings because we're installing this fall instead of next spring, and put that towards the smart controls. So we're also not paying financing charges on the smart controls, some of the additional spare inventory, or the remainder of this fiscal year maintenance contracts. So that's kind of the split between we stayed under our financing goals and we'll be under our operating goals in FY22. And then this is where I'll touch on, then we really start to see the savings as we move forward in the budgets. So if you look at the green and blue across each of these categories, that was in the report from Real Term. I just went and inserted so that we didn't, just in full sense of transparency, if you look at the total cost to the right, we're not going from the $237,000 for the wood poles down, for the Cobra heads, down to $66,000, because for the first 5 years, we are paying the finance charges of $77,000. But you can still see, even with that, it's a significant savings right off the bat. And then after the 5-year period, for the remainder of the 23-year life cycle of just these exact light fixtures, you're saving $200,000 a year. You're up in the $4 million worth of savings over a 20-year life. So before we're replacing fixtures at their end of life, but even that would happen sporadically throughout the network. So we will still pay electric bills, but you can see, for every 70-watt high-pressure sodium light that's out there, that's now going to be a 23-watt LED, and so on. We have a bunch of different fixtures. So the $159,000 we pay in leasing costs completely go away in the long term. We don't have those at all. What gets replaced is we do have $42,000 estimated in annual maintenance, but that may even be lower as we move through the life cycle and understand the ownership liabilities and costs that we have to juggle. So project highlights, this is the last slide I have. But so the LED conversion produces 72% operating cost reduction for the city. Payback period of only 3 to 4 years, depending on how the final numbers shake out after installation. Like I said, the estimated savings of $4 million over 20 years. Real-time monitoring of the controls, real-time monitoring and controls over all the citywide lighting. So we'll have some ability, not on a daily basis, not one light at a time, but we have the ability to control the lights and dim or raise the amount of light output. So places where these lights are going to naturally seem brighter to people, even if it's a direct wattage change. So at least in sensitive areas that maybe we're getting complaints that we've increased light too much, we can reduce. And in areas where there's either high crime, a school, whatever parameters we choose to set as a community, we would have the ability to adjust the light up a bit. So we'll run them at a slightly lower, 80% probably, is what some of our neighboring communities have done. It extends the life of the fixture and seems to be comparable to what's out there today for light levels. And also, now that we're going to own these, right now if we get a report that a light is out, we just simply forward that to Central Maine Power, and they mysteriously appear one night at the wee hours of the morning, and it gets replaced. Part of having the smart controls is now that we own it and are going to have to get a contractor in for maintenance, I don't want to have staff out driving around every night confirming whether or not a light may or may not be out. So we simply can just look at this dashboard, see every light. The map in the top right corner is similar. So this is a map that they've already provided us that show all of our existing fixtures and characteristics. But at any given time, a staff member could open and see every light in the city that is or isn't operating properly. I actually think it could have some emergency response benefits you would know what sections of the city have and don't have power. So if we have to bring generators to a traffic signal, we don't currently have remote monitoring abilities to know when the power is out. We could see, you could pretty quickly tell what areas the city do and don't have power. So a little side benefit, but I think something we'll utilize once we get the hang of the new software. And then the bottom picture is just to kind of, old high-pressure sodium lights are very yellow. A lot of feedback has been that in neighborhoods and whatnot, people have grown to like that look to some degree. I don't think anybody wants like bright orange, but at the same time, they don't want to go to a very cool white, almost bluish light. So we have gone with 3,000 Kelvin. So the color temperature for lighting, the lower it is, the more yellow it is. The higher it is, the whiter it is, the whiter or bluer. So the picture in the middle is kind of where we've gone, where it'll still have that yellowish hue. It'll still kind of look, it won't look too new age or too drastic a change. So we went with 3,000 Kelvin across the whole city. We had looked at doing a combination of bluer or whiter in the industrial areas, but the general feedback that we got from other communities was everybody was really happy with the areas that had the 3,000. So we're doing that, and it cuts down on the inventory and the number of fixtures we have to have on hand. So exciting project. It touches everyone's daily lives in Saco and saves us money heading into next budget year. So just really wanted to share that with you. But installation hasn't happened yet, so if there's any feedback you do want to share or anything you heard that perhaps you want more clarification on, Brian and I are signing the final documents pretty much right after this meeting, unless we hear otherwise, but it's not nothing, it's all we're within budgets that we set, it's all contracts that have already kind of been approved in the budget process. So there's no vote needed, but at the same time, happy to take any feedback or comments on it.
Thank you, Director Fox. Any questions for Director Fox at this time? Councilor Berman, then Councilor Johnston. Councilor Berman.
Yeah, thank you. It looks awesome. And if I understood correctly, it looks like there's even substantial savings right away, even while we're still paying back the $77,000 a year. So that's awesome.
Yeah.
Just kind of a question. Does this mean, so I was listening to the Maine Public Radio, and they were talking about dark sky events, and some communities are trying to dim their lights temporarily so people can engage with the stars, and some schools are doing this. Could we then turn off the lights, say, around a school during an event or in a particular neighborhood during an event to allow these kind of dark sky moments?
I think we will have that ability, like how much we can pre-program and set a schedule for a particular day or something. I think once we get into the software training, we'll know how much flexibility we have. We'll then have to gauge. I think it does have its places where it would be great to do that, but with it would come probably a little bit of liability to say if something did occur, why did you turn that light down to what is an acceptable level? So I think whatever board or committee we decide kind of looks at that. I'm sure traffic safety will visit the options we have and try to set some criteria so we don't just, you don't want somebody in my position creating some light show someday out in the North Saco or something. So yeah.
Or maybe we do, yeah.
Councilor Johnston.
Thank you. Not a question, just a comment. I mean, I've been pretty excited about this since the law went in place. I think Director Fox was, rather smartly kind of cautioned the Energy and Sustainability Committee about jumping right in and kind of sitting back and watching. And so I spent a lot of time, kind of watching what Biddeford was doing and checking their budgets over the last 3 years. And obviously the savings were actually realized. So, we have the savings, but we also have something that, maybe it's just me that appreciates it, but the quality of light is much more pleasing. I think the picture kind of shows that, but anybody that's really familiar with that orange hue, it's kind of dirty. And I mean, I know just in my household, my spouse prefers to walk in Biddeford because she feels safer, which, some people look at her strangely, but it's so much better lit that, that's her dog walking route. So I'm kind of looking forward to, bringing that, I guess, cleanliness to Saco. I just wanted to thank you for, the efforts that you kind of taken on over the last year or so. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. And thank you to our region for paving the way and making it easier for us, actually. We got to piggyback on all their lessons learned. So,
City Administrator Kainrath.
Thank you. I just want to follow up on the comment that Councilor Berman just made regarding the light pollution and the dark skies and issues out there. And just from my personal experience in doing this exact project in the community where I was previously administrator, it generated quite a bit of controversy when these new lights came on, and they were a sort of bright white light. We had numerous complaints, maybe more than we're anticipating. I don't know if it'll be the same case here, but I was shocked at the public outcry of just how bright these lights were. They couldn't see the stars anymore. They had to get new shades for their bedroom. So it cuts both ways, and I think we should just be prepared for some possible public comment back. And I think it's good that we have the ability to adjust some of these lights. But I was shocked at the amount of public participation at that point because it was significant. So we'll see how it goes, but I think we should be prepared for some feedback, positive and negative, with the new hue of some of these lights.
Thank you. Any other questions, discussion? Councilor Hatch?
Two points. First of all, I just wanted to compliment Public Works Director Fox. Another good example of our city staff managing a project very, very well. So I wanted to get that on the record. Pat, we talked this morning about neighborhoods, and in my ward there are a few, and I know there's some in other wards as well, where you have subdivisions that have the ornamental lighting as opposed to the Cobra heads. Can you just give us a little brief on how those will be handled?
yeah, so we are, So again, you can't just look at the ornamental lights look the same in a lot of our newer developments, but some of them are already city-owned. That was kind of part city decision, part developer as the neighborhoods came through. If they could put it on a meter and it was metered, the whole system is city-owned already. But for about 200 of these that we get, we chose not to pursue in this initial contract converting those over. So we're going to buy them from Central Maine Power, so we won't be leasing them anymore. So that gives us immediate savings, but we won't see the LED conversion savings. We're going to do that in-house with our equipment operator / electrician at Public Works, because they're not up in the high tension lines, they're not on main roads, we don't have to do as much traffic control, we don't have to do the work at night. So we will be going through the Energy Committee and utilizing other funds, or waiting a year and utilizing some of our savings, or proposing it in the budget to convert those as well. Thank you for bringing that up. So, but we'll save additional costs just by taking our time and doing those in-house. So, and you will see installation occur, to Brian's point about whatever feedback we do get, positive or negative from the public, you will see the installation occur once they get go-ahead, assuming that supply chains are okay, which they, as of a week ago, said they are. You will see the installation in October, November, so certainly by the first of the year, they'll be completely done with all conversions.
Thank you. Any further questions, discussion? Thank you, Director Fox.
Yep, thank you.
That brings us to item 11 of tonight's agenda, and that is administrative updates. City Administrator Kinrath.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Reminder, my city administrator open office hours for the public. The next event will be September 28th, 3:30 to 5, here on the second floor of City Hall in the auditorium. All residents, local business owners, of course, welcome and encouraged to attend. We have a new city bid opportunity for the IT department. The city of Saco is soliciting proposals for Cisco switching equipment. Proposals must be submitted on the bid response form in a sealed envelope or emailed to IT infrastructure bid. Proposals will be accepted until October 14th, 2021 at 1 p.m. at the Finance Office at Saco City Hall, 300 Main Street, Saco, Maine, 04072. There will be a public opening of all proposals received at that time, and electric bids may be submitted to itbids@sacomaine.org with the subject line IT infrastructure bid. Lastly, nomination petitions. The filing deadline, as you know, was last Friday. I have a list of those who officially qualified for the ballot. Also, of no absentee ballots will be available beginning October 4th and can be requested online or in person at the city clerk's office. Just for the public's information, I'll just run through the roster real quick. Council Ward 1, we have Councilor Archer. Ward 3, we have Councilor Gunn. Ward 6, we have Councilor McPhail. On the school board side, Ward 1, we have Ethan Alcorn and Arthur Archie. Ward 3, Jeffrey Richard. Ward 5, William Gale and Carrie Grover. Ward 7, we have Beth Johnston. And Ward 6, for warden clerk, we just have Claire Foran. So that is our roster for the 2021 municipal election. And again, absentee ballots available on October 4th. Please contact the city clerk's office. Thank you.
Thank you, City Administrator Kinrath. Any questions from the council? Seeing no questions, moving on to item 12, council discussion and comment. Any council discussion, Councilor Berman?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Now that we've made it through a number of charter amendments, one aspect of the process that I found confusing is that during our discussion, when amendments or changes were suggested, sometimes they'd be incorporated right into the packet for the next meeting. And this led to some confusion because sometimes the changes were suggested by just one councilor and they would be incorporated as if they were changes accepted by the council, and other changes suggested by other councilors might not have made it into the packet and already changed in the amendments. I've already discussed this with Brian, and my recommendation is that going forward, the next time we have charter amendments, when a particular councilor suggests an amendment, they appear in the packet as an amendment to the charter amendment that can then be discussed and voted on by council separately. And that will help us keep track of what text is being changed, why it's being changed, and make sure that we have agreement as a council before those changes in the text are enacted.
Thank you, Councilor Berman. Councilor Johnston.
Thank you. Yeah, I would agree with that. I found the same thing. It confused me several times, so I think going forward, amendments should be made on the floor, and we could just add suggested amendments in the packet. Thank you.
Thank you. City Administrator Kinrath.
I would just thank both of you for bringing that up. I agree with you. I think it is confusing, not just for council, but also staff sometimes when we're drafting not yet adopted amendments and putting them into the actual language. It makes for an awkward process. So I think from now on, the actual document will have only adopted amendments from the council, and proposed amendments will be separately in the packet, which will make the process, I think, much more clear. So thank you for bringing that up.
Thank you, City Administrator Canarath. Any further council discussion and comment? Moving on to item 13, executive session. There will be no item D, collective bargaining agreement. It is not ready to go, so that will not be something that we need to discuss in executive session. So with that, is there a motion to enter executive session for the A personnel update? Councilor Berman?
Sure. Be it ordered that the City Council enter into executive session pursuant to MRSA Title I, Chapter 13, Subchapter 1, Section 405, Subsection 6, A, personnel updates.
Motion's been made by Councilor Berman. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilor Hatch to enter executive session. Any discussion? Roll call vote to enter executive session. Councilor Archer?
Aye.
Councilor Purdy?
Yes.
Councilor Gunn?
Yes.
Councilor Berman?
Yes.
Councilor Hatch?
Yes.
Councilor McPhail?
Yes.
Councilor Johnston?
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0 to enter executive session at 8:11 p.m. Welcome back. The time is 8:47. Is there a motion to exit executive session?
So moved.
Counselor McPhail, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Counselor Purdy to exit executive session. Roll call vote. Counselor Archer?
Aye.
Counselor Purdy?
Yes.
Counselor Gunn?
Yes.
Counselor Berman?
Yes.
Counselor Hatch?
Yes.
Counselor McPhail?
Yes.
Counselor Johnston?
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0. Is there any report from executive session?
No report.
No report from executive session. That brings us to item 15. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Counselor Johnston, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Counselor Berman. Any discussion on adjournment? Roll call vote to adjourn. Counselor Archer?
Aye.
Counselor Purdy?
Yes.
Counselor Gunn?
Yes.
Counselor Berman?
Yes.
Counselor Hatch?
Yes.
Counselor McPhail?
Yes.
Counselor Johnston?
Yes.
Motion to adjourn passes 7-0 at 8:48. Thank you very much, everyone. Have a wonderful evening.